The haunted antique mirror. It was supposed to be just another weekend hunt. Lynn, a quiet university student majoring in art history, had a hobby most of her friends found strange, collecting antique objects. Not valuable antiques necessarily, just old things that had a story. She liked imagining who had owned them, where they'd been, and what secrets they might hold. It was a way to feel connected to a past that was slipping further away each day. So when she found a hidden stall tucked in the back corner of a dusty street market in Jalat, her curiosity flared instantly. The stall was unlike the others, dimly lit, the objects inside arranged haphazardly. A heavy scent of incense lingered in the air, mixing with something older, musty wood and faded time. The vendor, an elderly man with sun-spotted hands and a deeply lined face, sat in the shadows, puffing silently on a pipe. Lynn was about to pass by when something caught her eye. It was a mirror. An oval-shaped standing mirror about a meter tall, framed in dark hand-carved wood. The carvings were delicate, intricate, almost floral, but not quite. If one stared too long, the shapes seemed to twist, taking on unfamiliar forms that teased recognition but never delivered. The mirror's glass was old, not cracked or broken, but tarnished. The reflective surface shimmered like still water under a layer of dust, and Lynn thought she saw movement in it, even though she was standing perfectly still. She stepped closer. As she did, the vendor looked up sharply. "You have good eyes," he said, his voice hoarse like wind through dry leaves. "That one is special." Lynn tilted her head. "What do you mean?" The old man took another long drag from his pipe before answering. "It's been through many hands, but it remembers every face it's seen." She smiled politely. "That's a nice way to describe an antique." But something in the way he said it, remembers, clung to her. "How much?" she asked despite herself. The vendor studied her for a long moment before shrugging. "For you, 5 tram. That was cheap. Too cheap for something like this." Lynn didn't hesitate. She transferred the money via QR and watched as the vendor carefully wrapped the mirror in cloth, muttering what sounded like a prayer under his breath. That night, Lynn stood in her small rental room unwrapping the mirror. She propped it against the wall across from her bed. Its presence filled the room instantly. She admired the way the frame seemed to absorb the dim yellow light of her desk lamp, how the glass no longer shimmered like water, but felt heavier, denser, like the surface of a black lake just before dawn. She looked at her reflection. The usual tired eyes, messy ponytail, oversized hoodie. But then she noticed it. Her reflection blinked a second too late. Lynn froze. She leaned in, blinked. Nothing. It looked fine now. Maybe she was just tired. It had been a long day and she hadn't eaten properly. Still, as she turned off the light and slipped under her blanket, the mirror remained. Heavy. Watching. The dreams came that night. Disjointed, vivid. She stood in a hallway made of shadows, mirrors lining both walls. But the mirrors didn't reflect her. Instead, each one showed a different person, a man in a colonial-era suit, a woman in a tattered owl, a child with hollow eyes. Their faces were pale lips, unmoving, but their eyes followed her, always watching. When she woke up, her heart pounding, the first thing she saw was the mirror. Still there, still silent. Over the next week, strange things began happening. She would see flickers in the corner of her eye, reflections that didn't match reality. Once, brushing her teeth, she saw a second shadow behind her in the mirror. But when she turned, no one was there. She stopped sleeping well. Twice she found handprints on the surface of the glass. Small ones, like a child's. But her door had been locked. She tried covering it with a blanket, but the dreams worsened. And then came the faces. It started subtly, an unfamiliar face in the background, just for a second, just behind her shoulder. Then another, a woman with sunken cheeks, a boy with a wide, unblinking stare. One night she woke up to find herself standing in front of the mirror, even though she was still in bed. Her reflection wasn't her. Desperate, she brought the mirror to class, hoping her professor, Dr. Nguyen, a local expert on folk artifacts, could tell her something useful. He examined the piece carefully, frowning. "This is northern craftsmanship," he murmured. "Late 19th century, but the carvings, They're not typical. What do you mean? He pointed to a motif near the top. This isn't a flower, it's a symbol. Pre-colonial. Related to spirit houses. Mirrors like this were sometimes placed to trap spirits. There's a belief that the soul can be caught in reflective surfaces if one dies in front of them. Lynn went cold. So this was used to what keeps spirits in, or perhaps someone used it wrong. He looked up at her, concern deepening. Where did you get this street market in Jalat? He shook his head slowly. You should get rid of it. That night, Lynn tried. She dragged the mirror out to the alley behind her apartment. The frame was surprisingly heavy, as if it didn't want to move. She left it there, leaned against the dumpster. But in the morning, it was back, standing in her room, right where she had placed it the first night. The cloth she had used to wrap it was folded neatly at its base. Lynn didn't scream. She couldn't. Her voice felt stuck in her throat. She backed away, trembling. That day she skipped class. She took the mirror to the nearest temple. The monk there, an old woman with kind eyes, took one look and refused to touch it. You brought death with you, she whispered. This mirror has seen too much. Lynn begged her for help. The monk lit incense and offered prayers, but when Lynn turned to leave, the monk pulled her aside. You must not look into it again, and whatever happens, never speak to what's inside. But it was already too late. That night, Lynn was brushing her hair when she heard it. A whisper. From behind her. Lynn! She turned. The mirror was still, silent. She stepped closer. Lynn. It came again, faint, almost like a breath. The glass rippled. She gasped and stepped back. From within the mirror, a hand pressed against the inside of the glass. Fingers splayed, pale, thin. Then a face. Her own. But it smiled, not the way she would. No, it smiled like a predator. And then it spoke. You're mine now. Lynn screamed and threw a blanket over the mirror, then fled her room. She stayed at a friend's house that night. She didn't tell them why, just claimed a family emergency. But she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that face. Her face, but wrong. And the voice echoed, you're mine now. In the morning, she returned to her apartment. The blanket was gone. The mirror was clean. No dust, no fingerprints. It gleamed. She turned to run, but found herself unable to move. Her feet froze, her body stiffened. And then her reflection moved. It lifted its hand, and Lynn's hand moved with it. But she hadn't told it to. She tried to scream, but her voice was gone. She was no longer looking into the mirror. She was inside it, and outside, standing in her room, was the thing that wore her face. It looked around, smiled, and walked out the door. She clawed at the glass, screamed, but no sound came out. Faces began to appear beside her. The boy with hollow eyes, the woman in the owl dye, the man in the colonial suit, all trapped, all silent, all forgotten. Lynn collapsed in the darkness behind the glass, sobbing. And the mirror stood there in her empty room, waiting for the next curious soul. Reflections of the Dead. The following evening, the apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful, but rather unnatural. The moment Aaron stepped through the door, the air felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. He placed his bag down, glancing instinctively toward the corner of the room where the antique mirror stood. The drape had slipped again, just like the previous night. He walked over and fixed it, tucking the edges of the fabric behind the mirror so it wouldn't fall again. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Mel. Mel, you still have that creepy mirror. You should return it or smash it, honestly. Bad vibes all over that thing. Aaron didn't reply. He didn't want to admit he'd started hearing Things. Whispers in the quiet. Faint echoes like voices just outside his perception. Every night around the same time, 2:41 a.m., the room would feel colder. Not just cooler. Cold. Like standing in a morgue. He kept telling himself it was just his mind playing tricks. Maybe a draft. Or maybe the mirror simply creeped him out more than he realized. But something changed that night. Aaron dreamt again. This time it wasn't the woman in black. He stood in a dark hallway, old wallpaper, peeling off the walls, dim yellow lights flickering overhead. At the end of the corridor, a door was slightly ajar. From inside came the soft, unmistakable sound of weeping, the kind that comes from someone broken. He approached slowly, heart pounding with each step. His hand pushed the door open. The room was filled with mirrors, dozens of them. Some tall and standing, others small and round, leaning against chairs, shelves, even the floor. They reflected him, dozens of versions of himself, all pale, terrified, and confused. In the center of the room stood one mirror that was different, taller, older, its frame dark with burnished brass. The carvings were of vines. No, they were snakes, coiling and twisting around faces, dozens of faces that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. And in that mirror, Aaron didn't see himself. He saw a man, early 30s. Thin face, blood dripping from his nose, eyes black as void. The man mouthed something. "We are still here." Aaron bolted awake. The room was dark. His sheets were soaked in sweat. He reached for his phone, 2:41 a.m. Exactly. The next morning, he made a decision. He was going to get rid of the mirror. Carrying it down the narrow apartment stairs was harder than he thought. It was heavier now, oddly so. Like something inside it didn't want to be moved. As he walked toward the curb to leave it by the trash collection area, he nearly slipped. The glass shimmered for a moment, not with sunlight, but with movement. He looked again. His reflection was normal. But in the top corner of the mirror, a child's handprint was visible. Faint, like fogged glass. His blood ran cold. Aaron turned and marched the mirror back inside. He couldn't leave it. Not because he was scared, though he was, but because what if someone else took it? What if someone else got haunted by whatever was inside? He leaned it back against the wall, this time in his hallway, and sat down across from it. Then impulsively, he removed the drape completely. If this thing was cursed, haunted, possessed, whatever it was, time to know the truth. Aaron stared at the mirror for a full minute. Nothing happened. Then the lights flickered. The hallway grew colder, his breath fogged. He leaned closer. That's when he saw them. Reflections that shouldn't be there. Behind his own image, in the depth of the mirror, faces translucent, expressionless. Men, women, a child with hollow eyes, a woman with no mouth, an old man whose skin was covered in burn marks, all staring back at him from behind the glass. Aaron stumbled back, slamming into the wall. The mirror didn't move. It stood perfectly still, as if nothing had happened. He blinked. His reflection was alone again. Desperate for answers, Aaron returned to the antique store. But when he got there, the entire store was boarded up. A sign read "Closed permanently." He knocked anyway, no answer. He peeked through a crack in the wooden planks. The store looked abandoned, dust everywhere. Cobwebs, shelves half empty. Like no one had been inside for years. Confused, he turned to leave. Looking for the mirror, a voice rasped behind him. Aaron turned to find an elderly man sitting on the bench across the street. His eyes were clouded as if blind. "You bought the one with the brass frame," the man continued, not waiting for a response. "You see them now, don't you, in the glass?" Aaron stepped closer. "You know about it." The old man nodded. "They're the forgotten, the ones who died looking into it. The mirror doesn't just reflect your face, it remembers all the faces it's seen. Even the dead ones." Aaron sat down beside him, hands trembling. "What does it want from me?" The old man smiled faintly, lips cracked. "To be seen, to be remembered, and maybe to be freed." Aaron didn't understand. Freed from what? Before he could ask more, the man leaned in and whispered, "Don't break it, don't bury it. And whatever you do, never look into it at 2:41 a.m. Then he got up and walked away, disappearing into the alley. That night, Aaron couldn't sleep. He stayed up pacing the apartment. Every time he passed the hallway, the mirror seemed to pull at him, like a magnetic force, a silent invitation. 2:40 a.m. He stood in front of it, palms sweaty. He was breaking the rule, but he had to know. The second his eyes locked onto the glass, the room shifted. It wasn't his apartment anymore. He stood in a morgue, cold metallic gray. Bodies lay under white sheets. The sound of a clock ticked loudly somewhere. He tried to move, couldn't. The mirror in front of him reflected not his face, but that of the child. The same child from earlier. Her eyes were wide. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She pointed at him. Then she screamed. The sound shattered the silence like glass. Aaron screamed too, and suddenly he was back. He was on the floor of his hallway, the mirror unbroken, but a long, shallow scratch now ran down the center of the glass, like something had tried to claw its way out. The next morning, Aaron visited the library. He dug through city records, historical archives, and finally in an old newspaper from 1965, he found it. Family of 4 dies in mysterious fire. House contained odd ritual objects. The photo showed the mirror. Same frame, same snakes. The article mentioned that the mirror was recovered from the rubble untouched by flame. Other clippings followed. 1978, a man disappears after buying a mirror at a estate sale. 1989, teen girl suffers breakdown, claims faces in mirror speak to her. 2003, antique store worker dies of heart failure, mirror found near body covered in handprints. It had happened before. Again and again, Aaron realized this mirror didn't belong to anyone. It chose people. It waited to be found. And once you saw the faces, they never left you. When he returned to his apartment, the air felt different, thicker. He walked slowly down the hallway. The mirror was gone. Panic set in. He searched every room, nothing, until he looked into the bathroom mirror and saw it. Not the antique mirror itself, but its reflection. As if it were inside the mirror he was looking into. And behind it, the woman in black. Her head tilted. Her mouth didn't move, but he heard her. "You let us in." Then her hands pressed against the inside of the bathroom mirror from the other side. Aaron screamed and stumbled back, knocking over the sink trash. When he looked again, the bathroom mirror was normal. No woman, no antique reflection, just his own terrified face. But things didn't stop there. From that night on, any mirror in Aaron's life bathroom, car, store window could show them. The dead. Reflections that didn't belong. Sometimes they just stared. Other times they mimicked his every move with a fraction of a second delay, like puppets out of sync. He started covering every mirror he could. He stopped shaving, brushed his teeth in the dark, but reflections still found ways to appear. In water puddles, in windows at night, in the glint of his phone screen. One day while walking through the city, Aaron saw a window display with multiple mirrors. He stopped and saw none of the reflections were his. He wasn't there. Only the faces, the forgotten, the reflections of the dead. He's being watched, that much is clear. But by whom? And for what purpose? Each time he dreams, he sees a new face. Sometimes they whisper names, sometimes they cry, sometimes they simply watch. Aaron begins to question if he's still alive. What if the mirror doesn't just remember the dead? What if it traps them? Who was that behind me? Ko ai jo jung so long, im hung kiem kwe lai thi kong thayaka. That one sentence was all it took to chill Tim to the bone. He paused the video clip, staring at the grainy footage of his sister Mai, sitting on her bed, whispering into her phone with an expression that could only be described as broken. Her eyes were sunken, her skin pale, and her voice frayed. That wasn't how she used to be. She'd been bright, clever, always teasing him over his obsession with horror stories and his little ghost hunting YouTube channel. But 3 days ago, Mai had vanished, and this clip was the last thing she'd sent him. The timestamp showed it was recorded at 2:13 a.m., the same night neighbors said they heard screaming from her room, only to find it locked from the inside. The police said she probably ran away, that maybe she was under stress. But Tom knew better. He knew it had something to do with that mirror. He had seen it once when he visited Mai's boarding room just a month before she disappeared. She'd called him over because she'd found an awesome prop for his horror videos, an old antique mirror she picked up from a second-hand seller who refused to give his name. Tom remembered the way his spine tingled when he first looked at it. It wasn't just creepy, it felt wrong. Like something was hiding behind the glass, watching. Mai had laughed off his hesitation. "Come on, An. You're the ghost guy, right? What's scarier than a haunted mirror?" She wasn't joking anymore. 2 weeks later, when she started talking about faces in the glass, about voices at night, about something that looked like her but wasn't. Now sitting in her empty room, the mirror still propped up against the same wall, Tom didn't laugh either. He pressed record on his camera. Day 1, investigation into Mai's disappearance. Suspected connection to antique mirror. No signs of forced entry or struggle. Mirror appears undamaged. He paused, shifting the camera toward the mirror. His reflection looked back at him, blank-faced, just a young man with bags under his eyes and a black hoodie. Normal. He took a breath and stepped closer. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding." The first 2 nights were quiet. Tom set up motion detection cameras around the mirror and recorded hours of footage. Nothing unusual. No flickers, no faces, just silence. He almost believed he'd imagined it all. But on the 3rd night, around 3 a.m., he woke up to the sound of breathing. Not his own, shallow, raspy, directly behind him. He sat up instantly. His room was dark, save for the faint red blink of his recording camera. He turned toward the mirror. In it, he saw something. A figure standing behind him. He spun around, heart in his throat. No one. But when he looked back at the mirror, it was still there. It didn't move, didn't blink. Just stood there, blurred, watching. He grabbed the flashlight from his desk and pointed it toward the space behind him. Nothing. Back at the mirror, still there. But now, it was closer. Day 4, he whispered into the camera the next morning, his voice shaking. The mirror reflects things that aren't there, or maybe things that are but shouldn't be. He replayed the footage from the night before, frame by frame. At 2:59 a.m., a shadow began to form behind him in the reflection. By 3:02, it was clearly a person, tall, gaunt features blurred like smeared charcoal. But the real kicker, Tom never moved, never looked back, just lay there asleep. The figure, though, leaned closer, toward him, mouth open, as if whispering something. At 3:04 a.m., it vanished. He started researching. Forums, old legends, obscure Reddit threads, Vietnamese folk tales about haunted objects, especially mirrors. He stumbled across a user named AlinTrapKnife4 who posted once years ago on an abandoned thread. It reflects the dead, and it remembers. You think you're looking in, but something else is looking out. No one had replied to her post. He clicked her profile, deactivated. But her name, Lynn, that was the name scratched into the underside of the mirror's wooden frame, which he'd found when inspecting the carvings more closely that morning. That night, things escalated. He was documenting carvings on the frame, zoomed-in shots, taking notes when the lights flickered. The camera feed scrambled, and then a voice. Soft, raspy, right behind him. "Why are you here?" He turned. The room was empty, except the mirror. His reflection was gone. Gone. Only the room showed in the glass, empty, except for a dark shape standing just inside the reflection's doorway. Tim swallowed. Who are you?" The shape in the mirror moved. It stepped forward, took his shape, his face. But the eyes were wrong. Black, empty, smiling. "Who am I?" it echoed. "I'm what's left when you forget the faces." Then the glass cracked, just a hairline. The image disappeared. His reflection returned. Day 5, I think I saw myself, but it wasn't me. He sat shaking in front of the camera. I think the mirror copies people or traps them. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's alive. He stood and pointed the camera toward the mirror. On a whim, he picked up a black marker and scrawled across the glass. Who was that behind me? And beneath it, where is my... He stepped back. Nothing. Until the writing on the mirror faded. Not smeared, not erased. Absorbed. And in its place, new words began to appear. Slowly, like someone was writing them from inside the mirror. She looked back. Then now she's inside. Tum staggered away, knocking over the tripod. The camera hit the floor and shut off. The mirror didn't respond again that night, but Tum didn't sleep. He sat facing it with a flashlight, a rosary, and an increasingly wild theory. What if the mirror took people the moment they acknowledged the other presence? What if you weren't supposed to look back? What if Mai broke the rule? He thought of her final video. Her whisper, Ko I Jo Jung Sao Lungam. Day 6. He made a decision. He would fake it, test it. He'd simulate the moment Mai experienced. He set up the camera set in front of the mirror. He whispered, who's that behind me? And then he didn't turn. He kept his eyes on the glass. A shape began to form. Just like before. Looming, closer. He stared, unblinking. The whisper came again. Ina, look. He resisted. No. The figure pressed a hand to the inside of the glass. Tum trembled. He took a breath. Bring her back. Silence. Then one leaves, one stays. Tum clenched his fists. Take me. The mirror went dark. He woke up hours later, face down on the floor, bleeding. A small cut across his forehead. The mirror? It was blank. No writing. But beside it on the floor was a photo. An old Polaroid. Of Mai. But something was wrong. Her smile was stiff, her eyes wide. And behind her, barely visible in the background, was the mirror. And in the mirror, a reflection that wasn't hers. That night, he tried one last thing. He brought candles, chalk. He drew a circle around the mirror and placed 3 offerings, salt, rice, and water. Things his grandmother told him could trap spirits. Then he opened the camera. Final recording. If this gets posted and I don't come back, the mirror is cursed. Destroy it. Don't let it see your eyes. He looked straight into the glass. The reflection twisted. And then for the first time, he saw her, Mai, behind the glass, screaming, mouth open in silent horror. Tum ran forward, slamming his palm against the glass. When Mei, her fingers reached for his. For a moment, just a second, they touched. And then Nenirosamrum, he was gone. The camera kept recording. The mirror stood still. And in its surface, 2 figures now appeared. Trapped, watching, waiting. And outside the mirror, the door creaked open. A girl peeked inside, curious. She looked at the mirror. She saw her own face, and she whispered, who was that behind me? The night whispers begin. The mirror changed hands again. No one knew exactly how it ended up at the warehouse clearance in the outskirts of Bien Hoa. Some said it was found among the belongings of a young man who had vanished from his boarding room. Others claimed it was dumped in an alley, standing upright, without a speck of dust on its glass surface, despite the muddy street. But like all cursed things, it eventually found its way into the hands of someone who didn't know how to fear it yet. This time it was Vi. She was 23, lively, curious, and newly employed at a vintage decor store specializing in pre-1975 collectibles. Her job was to photograph, catalog, and manage the store's online shop. When her boss wheeled the mirror in one rainy morning, muttering something about a rare French colonial piece, Vi was instantly drawn to it. It was unlike any mirror she'd seen before, tall, oval, with a frame carved in almost botanical patterns. But the more she looked, the less sure she was. They were flowers. The wood felt cold even in the warm room. The glass was dark and deep, like it held something beneath its surface. This came in from a guy who runs clearance after evictions, her boss explained, patting the side of the mirror. Creepy, huh? But it'll sell well. Weirdos love this kind of thing. Vi nodded. She didn't tell her boss the truth. That even before he brought it in, she'd heard something whisper her name from the back of the van. That night, Vi stayed late at the shop to finish inventory. The rain had turned into a full thunderstorm, and her co-worker had already left. She brewed herself a cup of instant coffee and sat cross-legged on the floor, photographing the mirror for the website. Every photo came out wrong, blurry, warped. In one, her own reflection was missing. In another, it showed her looking over her shoulder, even though she was facing forward when the shutter clicked. She rubbed her eyes, blamed the cheap lighting, and deleted the batch. She picked up her phone, opened the camera again, and pointed directly at the mirror. That's when she heard it. Bleh. She froze. It had been soft, like breath. She glanced around. The shop was empty. The lights buzzed faintly overhead. Then again, very ray. This time it was clearer, closer. She backed away slowly from the mirror. Her phone shook in her hand. Behind her in the mirror's reflection, something moved. She turned, nothing. But when she looked back, there it was. A handprint on the inside of the mirror. Small, childlike, pressed from the inside. Vi dropped her phone. It hit the floor screen first and shattered. She didn't bother picking it up. She ran. She called in sick the next day, then the next. The shop owner, frustrated, left a message saying if she didn't come in by Monday, she was out. But Vi wasn't thinking about her job anymore. She was thinking about the whispers. Because they had followed her home. They started as faint echoes in the bathroom, then in the kitchen, then from her bedroom mirror. But it wasn't her mirror. It was the antique one, she was sure of it. Somehow it was still watching her. On the third night, she woke at 3:11 a.m. The apartment was dark still. And then the raw whispers everywhere. Her name, over and over, soft, urgent. She tried turning on the light. The switch didn't work. Her phone was dead. She reached for her bedside mirror, flipping it down so it faced the table. But even then in the glass, she saw movement. She covered it with a towel. The whispers grew louder, from beneath the cloth. Vi, look at me. Desperate, she called her grandmother in the countryside the next morning. Bangawai had always spoken of old beliefs, spirit mirrors, soul traps, things that watch through reflective surfaces. Vi had never paid it any mind before. Now she listened to every word. You brought something home, her grandmother said simply. Something that isn't meant to be seen. What do I do? Vi whispered, her voice shaking. Do not listen. Do not speak to it. Most importantly, do not answer when it calls you by name after midnight. Vi nodded. Can I get rid of it? There was a pause. If it knows your name, it already lives inside your reflection. Burning the object won't matter now. That night, Vi didn't sleep. She taped newspaper over every mirror in her apartment. The bathroom, the bedroom, her laptop screen, even the microwave. She unplugged everything. Then she waited. Midnight passed. 1 a.m. Silence. But at 2:33 a.m., the whispers began. Faint, like wind under a door. She covered her ears. They grew louder. A scratching sound started on the wall behind her bed. Soft at first, then frantic, like nails on plaster. She turned to look. The wall cracked, just slightly. Then, her name, but not in her own voice. In her mother's voice. She sat frozen. Then came the second voice. Her father's, then her dead cat. Then a teacher she hadn't seen since middle school. All whispering her name. All from behind the wall. And then came the worst, her own voice. Soft, desperate, begging. Vi, please, let me out. She snapped. She screamed and tore down the paper from the nearest mirror. Her own reflection stared back at her. Then, when Hamaniman smiled and blinked after she did. Why'd you hide me? It asked. Vi stumbled back. Her reflection remained where it was. Don't you want to see what I've seen? Vi grabbed the heaviest thing she could find, a glass vase, and hurled it at the mirror. It shattered. Shards flew everywhere. Blood ran down her hand from where the vase cut her palm. The whisper stopped. The silence was instant, oppressive, but her reflection in the shards on the floor still moved. Too late, it whispered. You already let me in. The next morning, her neighbor reported strange crying through the walls. Police found the apartment door open. Vi was gone. No signs of forced entry, no signs of a struggle. Just a shattered mirror and blood on the floor. The police never found her body. But 2 weeks later, a different antique dealer picked up a load of salvaged furniture from a cleared apartment. Among it all, he found a mirror, shattered but with every shard reassembled, perfectly held together by something unseen. And in it, when he looked close enough, he could swear he saw a girl's face silently screaming from beneath the surface. Some say the mirror is still out there, traveling city to city, market to market. It whispers only to the ones who are vulnerable, alone, curious, and those who hear it at night usually don't survive long enough to warn the next. Because once it knows your name, it becomes part of you. You start hearing it everywhere, in quiet rooms, in passing windows, in puddles after the rain. And one night when you're too tired, too distracted, too curious, you look. You answer. You whisper back. Who's there? And the voice replies, Wendelwarden, Cern 14. You. Faces I've never seen before. Don't look directly into it. That was the only instruction Koa remembered from the seller at the night market in Huo. The man had a crooked smile and a milky white eye, and he wrapped the mirror in burlap without asking any questions. Koa, a traveling documentarian known for his underground horror series, Artifacts of the Forgotten, was used to finding strange things. Haunted dolls, cursed amulets, bones in jars. But something about this mirror stood out. Not its age, not its weight, but the way, even wrapped in rough cloth, it seemed to pulse with presence. Almost like it was aware. Koa brought it to the abandoned colonial villa where he was filming his next episode. The place had no power, no signal, and no neighbors for miles. Perfect for spooky footage. He had a 3-day window before the rain came and cut the mountain road off again. He set up his gear, tripod, LED panels, drone, recorder. The mirror for now sat against the far wall, still covered. His producer Lan arrived later that afternoon. She didn't like the mirror at all. There's something off, she muttered, circling it. I keep feeling watched. Koa grinned. Exactly, that's the point. Lan didn't laugh. Day 1, set up an introduction. The first video shoot went smoothly. Koa recorded his usual dramatic monologue. Some say mirrors are portals. Others say they trap souls. But what if there are mirrors that remember? Tonight we investigate an artifact with no recorded origin, one whispered about in online forums and police reports alike. As he pulled the cloth away, revealing the mirror for the first time on camera, a sudden gust of cold air swept through the room. The candle he had placed nearby snuffed out. The camera flickered. Perfect timing, Koa chuckled. Lan frowned. We're not doing effects today, right? Nope. That night, Koa reviewed the footage. At first glance, nothing unusual, but on a closer look, in the first 10 seconds after the cloth is removed, there's a blur in the mirror. A face. Not his, not Lan's. It lasted only a frame. Pale, hollow eyes, lips sewn shut. He replayed it. Frame by frame. It was real. And then the footage glitched just once. An audio spike, static, right before the whisper. Koa turned up the gain, replayed it. Behind the rustling of the cloth, behind the creak of the floorboards. Let me out. He didn't sleep well. The wind clawed at the windows like fingernails. And in his dream, he stood in a mirrorless room. But it wasn't empty. He saw rows of people, facing away. Dozens of them, silent, motionless. When he tried to speak, none turned. Until the last row. A small boy turned to face him. Half his face was missing, but he smiled. You brought us back, the boy whispered. Then everything went dark. Day 2, more faces appear. Lan woke him up, her face pale. I saw someone, she said. In the mirror, a girl. She waved at me. Koa stared. When, just now, I was setting up the mics. They rushed back to the room. The mirror was normal. But now there were fingerprints on the glass. Small, multiple sizes. Too many to be Lan's or Koa's. Lan stepped back. I want to leave. Koa hesitated. He looked into the mirror. He saw his face. Then behind it, another? A girl in a school uniform soaking wet. Eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Then she was gone. He grabbed his camera. Lan were filming, right now. They shot a second segment, this time focused on the carvings. Lan read old folk texts Koa had brought. One passage stood out. The mirror sees not just who you are, but who has passed behind you. It remembers what even the dead forget. Koa zoomed into a carving at the top center, an eye stylized almost human, surrounded by writhing shapes. Lan leaned in. There's something inside the eye. Koa scraped gently with a brush. Beneath the dirt, a name. Lin. Lan froze. I've seen that name. Where? In the message board where you found the mirror. The one with the girl warning people not to look directly into it. That night, Koa left the camera recording the mirror overnight. At exactly 3:00 a.m., the footage caught movement. 13 faces appeared, one by one. Men, women, children. Some modern, some in old clothing. One had a plastic oxygen mask melted across her face. Another had ropes around her wrists. They didn't blink, didn't speak, just watched. At 3:14 a.m., they disappeared. But when Koa and Lan reviewed the footage the next morning, they counted only 12. Where's the last one? Lan asked. Koa paused. She was right. He remembered 13. But now, only 12. And none of them matched the one he saw alive, the boy with the sewn lips. Day 3, one face too many. The third day, the villa grew colder. Every room. Despite the weather outside being muggy and hot. Lan refused to enter the mirror room. She stayed in the kitchen packing. Koa wasn't ready to leave. He wanted answers. He set up every camera, every mic, pointed them all at the mirror. And then he did something he swore he wouldn't. He asked a question. Looking straight into the glass, he whispered, Who are you? Nothing. He leaned closer. Why do I see faces I've never known? This time the mirror responded. Fog formed on the inside, and written in the mist, because they know you. Koa stumbled back. The mist faded, and then face after face emerged again. But these were moving. One blinked, another opened her mouth, a third began to cry. All looked at Koa, and one faced his own grin. She's waiting, behind the frame. Koa backed into a chair, heart pounding. His voice trembled. Waiting for what? The reflection whispered. For you to forget your face. Lan screamed. Koa ran out. She was in the hallway staring at her phone. It showed a selfie of her and Koa from last week. But his face was gone. Just a blur where his head should be. She opened her gallery. Every picture of him blurry, disfigured. Is this a prank? She asked, voice cracking. Koa couldn't answer. He pulled up his own photos. Same thing. Worse, in one group photo taken years ago, he saw a stranger standing behind him. One of the mirror faces. How long had they been watching? That night, the villa caught fire. They never found the source. Koa and Lan barely escaped with their lives. They left everything behind, including the mirror. But the next morning when they returned to the site to retrieve gear, the mirror was untouched, standing perfectly. Not a single burn, no soot, no crack, just reflections. Now with 14 faces, in one of them was Lan. She screamed. Koa dragged her away. They left. They never went back. Weeks later, Koa received a package. No return address. Inside a single mirror shard, wrapped in cloth. With it a note. She knows now, you're next. And in the shard, Koa saw a face. Not Lan, not his, but a face he had never seen before. One that smiled and whispered, We remember, even if you don't. The mirror remembers, even if you forget. They say memory is fragile. But what if there's something out there that remembers better than you do? Not just events, not just faces, but the exact shape of your fear long after you've tried to forget it. Koa learned this the hard way. 1 month later, Jalat. The mountain air was cold. Wet pine needles clung to the misty windows of the bungalow. Koa hadn't filmed since the fire. He hadn't touched a camera either. Lan had disappeared the week after they left the villa. She sent him one last text. "I saw her in the rearview mirror." She smiled. "I'm going to find answers. Don't follow me." And then nothing. Her phone disconnected. Her social media wiped. Even her family didn't know where she'd gone. Koa tried to forget. He really did. But the shard kept calling to him. That single sliver of mirror. It sat in his locked drawer, wrapped in cloth, and every night he heard whispers from it. He started losing time. 10-minute blackouts. Objects in the house moved. Photos on his wall changed subtly, like someone had retouched the people in them. In one, his childhood friend was replaced by a girl with hollow eyes. In another, he stood alone where he was sure Lan had once been beside him. And his reflection, it began to lag behind him, turning its head a half-second too late, blinking when he didn't. Once he caught it smiling, even though his mouth was shut tight. On the second week, he woke up to find the mirror shard placed neatly on his pillow, unwrapped, clean, waiting. It shouldn't have been there. He had locked it away in a metal case inside a drawer, then duct taped the whole thing shut. Now it was here, and on the surface of the shard, someone had written in steam-like fog. "Do you remember her name?" He didn't. He tried. The girl in the mirror, the one in the uniform, the one who whispered. He remembered her face, but not her name. The mirror did. It always did. He began to dream again, but the dreams felt like downloads. Not imagined, not abstract, precise, detailed. One dream, a hospital corridor, fluorescent lights buzzing, a teenage girl strapped to a bed, screaming. Doctors yelling, "She won't stop drawing them." A nurse whispering, "She says they live in glass." Another dream, a school bathroom, a group of girls laughing cruelly, forcing another girl to stare into a hand mirror. She says the dead look back. Slap, blood, shattered glass. The mirror cracks. The laughing stops. Someone begins to scream and never stops. The next morning, Koa traced the faces again. There were 16 now. He hadn't filmed anything. He hadn't posted anywhere. And yet the mirror shard showed more faces every few days. One face he was sure was his mother, but she had died 2 years ago. Another looked like his college roommate missing since 2016. Another resembled Lan. He ran image recognition. No matches online. But deep inside, he knew the truth. They were all people who had seen the mirror, touched it. He remembered the seller's words again. Don't look directly into it. It wasn't superstition. It was containment. Koa decided to return to the cellar. He retraced his steps to Hugh. The night market was gone. Burned down last week, a vendor said. No one remembered the blind-eyed man, except one boy. He lived in the cemetery, the kid whispered. Koa followed the directions. At the end of a moss-covered path, he found a shack. Old tea, rotten. Inside, dozens of broken mirror frames, piled like coffins, and on the wall scratched in blood. The mirror remembers, even if you don't. Suddenly, a noise from beneath the floorboards. A faint rhythmic tapping, like someone knocking from below. He pried open the rotted planks. Beneath them, a crawl space. And in the center, a full-length mirror, cracked in 9 places, bound in red thread. A note pinned to it. If you see her, don't answer her question. Before he could touch it, a voice spoke from behind him. You shouldn't be here. It was Lan, but not the Lan he remembered. She was pale, gaunt. Her eyes had no light, and her reflection didn't match. The mirror version of Lan was smiling, wide, cruel. Koa backed away. Lan stepped closer. She's inside now, she whispered. The more you forget, the stronger she gets. Who is she? You knew her. Once, she watched you, long before the mirror. Lan reached into her coat and pulled out a photo. It was old, faded. Koa and a girl, high school. He didn't remember. The girl's name was written on the back. Lini. Suddenly his head hurt. Memories flashed, recessed laughter, drawing comics. Then Lynn crying, blood, a shattered compact mirror. He had laughed with the others. He had watched and said nothing. And then she was gone. Lynn. That was her name. She had vanished in 12th grade. Official Story family moved away. But now Koa remembered. She had died. Jumped from the school roof. No funeral. Just silence. The mirror had been hers. A gift from her mother, old, passed down. Lan spoke again. She doesn't want revenge. She wants permanence. Every time someone sees her, she becomes more real, more remembered. She's building herself from pieces of others. And you, Koa, you gave her her first audience. He dropped to his knees. The guilt overwhelmed him. I didn't know. Lan didn't blink. But the mirror did. Suddenly, the mirror under the floor began to hum. Not a sound exactly, but a pressure in the ears. Lan clutched her head. She's almost whole. She just needs one more. Koa stared at the mirror, his own face reflected. Then her, Lin, beautiful, pale, eyes wide. She reached toward him through the glass. Her voice echoed in his mind. Do you remember what you said to me? He did, and he wished he didn't. He had told her to stop acting weird, to stop making people uncomfortable, to just disappear if she couldn't fit in. It was a joke, but it wasn't. And now she had never forgotten. The mirror had never forgotten. And now she was more real than anyone else he knew. Koa turned to Lan. We have to destroy it. She laughed. You can't destroy memory, but I can replace it. Koa pulled out his phone. He began to film. He pointed it at the mirror, at himself, at Lin, and he spoke. My name is Koa, and I remember Lin. He told the story, the real one. Not for views, not for drama, but for truth. I was part of her pain. I ignored her suffering. I contributed to her silence, and she deserves to be remembered for more than her death. I'm sorry. The mirror cracked. A new fissure split across the center. Lin's face distorted. She didn't scream. She smiled. The house began to shake. Lan screamed. The mirror glowed, then shattered inward, not outward, as if it had been sucked into itself. And all the frames on the walls cracked at once. Then in Narston, Petini, silence. Just dust. Just wood. No more reflections. Epilogue. 2 weeks later, Koa published the video. He called it The Girl the Mirror Remembered. It wasn't flashy. No jump cuts, no sound design. Just a man talking to a camera beside a broken mirror. The video went viral. Thousands commented. Some shared stories of girls like Lin. Some claimed they saw her in their dreams. But no new faces appeared on the mirror shard again. Koa had it sealed in resin. He kept it in a museum exhibit now. A mirror that remembered too well. And beneath it a simple plaque. In memory of Lin, may we never forget. But sometimes, late at night, he still sees something in the reflection. Not a face, not a figure, but a feeling. A reminder. That memory is a gift and a curse. Because the mirror doesn't need to be whole to remember. Broken glass, broken soul. 6 months later, Saigon. The city never slept. Koa did, but not peacefully. The viral video brought him a strange kind of fame. Comments flooded in, some thanking him, some warning him. A few were just unsettling. One said, Risrantun, you remembered Lin, but how many others were forgotten? Another, the mirror was one of 9. Where are the rest? And a third, check your reflection when you're alone. You'll see her smile. He dismissed them at first, but then things started again, subtle but familiar. The mirror shard, once sealed in resin, began to fog from the inside. A tiny fracture split across the surface, even though it had been encased in a museum-grade block. And in that fracture, a sliver of a face. Not Lin's. Someone else. A new presence. It watched him. Waited. Reflected things that weren't in the room. Koa started researching. What had Lan said? She doesn't want revenge. She wants permanence. But Lin was at peace. He had felt it. So, who was this? He traveled to Hugh again. The shack was gone, burned down to the foundations. But in the ashes he found glass, melted, twisted, and something else, an old diary half burned. Most of it was unreadable, but a single page was intact. She wasn't the first, she was just the one who remembered hardest. The mirror was part of a set, 9. Each reflects not just the face, but the fracture inside. The handwriting ended in a smear of blood. Below it, a list of names. Lynn was third. 8 others. All female. All forgotten. He tracked one name to a temple in Gialai. The priestess there went silent when he mentioned the mirror. Then she pointed to a locked cabinet. Inside, a cracked vanity mirror bound with red yarn wax seals around its edges. "We've kept this quiet for years," she whispered. "It doesn't show your reflection. It shows who you used to be, or what you could have become. It breaks people. It broke my sister." She never looked away. Koa leaned close. Inside, he saw himself, but not now. A version of him who never picked up a camera, never chased views, never met Lan. He was happy, simple, and alone. Then the mirror began to ripple, and a second image appeared beside his own. A girl. This time she was smiling, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Who is she?" Koa asked. The priestess didn't answer, but her hands trembled. He brought the photo to a digital archivist. Facial reconstruction, historical filters, cross-comparison with public records. It took weeks. Finally, one name emerged. Huang Mai disappeared 1991, 17 years old, born in Baccalieu. Last seen looking into a store mirror at a pawn shop before collapsing into a seizure. Brain activity never returned to normal. Died 2 weeks later. Her last words: "She's inside the glass. She's made of pieces. Pieces. Like shards. Like a soul split across reflections." Each mirror wasn't haunted by someone new. They were haunted by pieces of the same girl. Lynn had been the loudest, but she wasn't alone. They were all her, or at least part of her. Each name on the list, each girl had seen a fragment. Some forgot, some died, some remembered too much. Koa now knew what he had to do: find the remaining mirrors and face whatever waited inside. The next was in a flooded village outside Chamao, hidden inside a sunken shrine. Local fishermen spoke of a curse. You see someone in the water looking back, but it's not your reflection. The mirror was underwater, covered in barnacles and silt. When he retrieved it, the air grew cold. And from behind him, he heard the voice. "You know me now, but do you understand me?" Koa turned. Nothing. But the mirror, still wet, reflected his own face, and someone whispering in his ear. Back at the lodge, he cleaned the mirror. Another face appeared. Girl, young, wearing a white uniform, smudged makeup, blood on her shirt. The next name on the list: Tranangok, missing 2003. He remembered the story. It was in a message board thread years ago. A girl in a school restroom had stared into a hand mirror, said she saw someone else blink inside it. She screamed. No one ever found her body, just the mirror, broken into 4. One shard had ended up here. That night, Koa dreamed again. But this time, he wasn't watching. He was inside, surrounded by broken mirrors. Dozens, hundreds, all floating in darkness. And through each shard, a different girl's face stared back, smiling, crying, bleeding, dying. Then one face turned and spoke to him directly. "You're not saving us. You're just trying to forget what you started." He woke in a sweat. Lan was standing at the door. "Another one just surfaced," she said. The 7th mirror. They flew to Jacques Nong, a mining tunnel, closed off for years. Inside, hidden behind a false wall, a mirror the size of a plate. Smooth, no cracks. But it reflected nothing, just darkness. Lan touched it, and she gasped. "It's not a reflection, it's a window." Koa touched it next, and he saw the truth. Not all the girls were victims. Some were pieces of a larger mind, a presence, a soul that had been shattered. Not by violence, not by cruelty, but by being forgotten. It fed not on pain, but on memory. It wanted to be remembered so fully that it would leave pieces of itself behind in everyone who saw it, until it could reassemble, not into a person, but into a force, a god of mirrors. Koa stepped back. "We've already given it everything." Lan nodded. "But maybe we can give it one last thing." And he named him. That was what it lacked. All this time, not Lin, not Mai, not Ngok. Those were masks, memories borrowed, faces worn for survival. But its true name had been erased. That was why it couldn't rest. It didn't want revenge. It wanted identity. Koa returned home. He pulled out all the footage, every mirror he had visited, every girl's face. He created one final documentary, raw, unscripted. He called it Broken Glass, Broken Soul, the mirror's name. And he ended it with a question. If you've seen her, if you remember even a fragment, leave a comment. Tell us what you saw. Help rebuild her truth. The internet exploded. Thousands commented. Some saw her as a child in a car window. Others in a dark shop, a hospital, a funeral. The details varied. But one name appeared again and again. A name he didn't include. A name he'd never seen before. An Hien. He researched. Anin Hien. Born 1969. Died 1984. Cause blunt trauma, suicide ruled likely. Left behind a journal filled with mirror sketches. Last entry. I see myself, but she's smiling when I'm not. She's learning me. Soon she'll be more me than I am. Koa whispered the name to the seventh mirror. An Hien. The surface rippled. And for the first time, the mirror reflected him clearly. No ghost. No girl. No fragment. Just him. Whole. Real. And the reflection smiled with him. Not before, not after. With him. Together. The eighth mirror surfaced weeks later. Already broken. And the ninth, still missing. But Koa knew one thing. Nien was no longer hunting. She was being remembered. And with that, she was finally beginning to rest. But, every once in a while, when you pass a mirror late at night, if your reflection lingers too long, or smiles when you don't, you might ask yourself, is she looking back? Not to harm you, not to haunt you, but to ask, do you remember me now? The truth buried in the frame. The day after the mirror cracked was colder than usual. Not just in the air, but in the way everything around Liam felt distant, like the world had shifted a few degrees away from reality. The dorm room still smelled faintly of burning sage from the night before, but it hadn't helped. If anything, it made the silence feel more hollow. Liam stared at the mirror again, now shrouded beneath a thick navy bedsheet. No matter how many times he tried to forget, he could still picture the faces, dozens, maybe more. People he had never met, all staring back at him with hollow expressions, their mouths slightly open as if trying to scream through the glass. But it was what happened after the mirror cracked that haunted him most. That scream. Not his, not even Matt's. It came from the mirror. One, a visit to the library archives. Determined to understand what this thing really was, Liam skipped class and headed straight to the university library. Not the digital archives or the reading room. No, he went deeper to the special collections where the oldest materials were kept. With some coaxing and a mention of research on Victorian-era artifacts, the archivist, an older woman with thick glasses and a sharper mind, agreed to help. He pulled out his phone and showed her the photo of the mirror taken before the sheet was thrown over it. Her reaction was immediate. Her lips parted slightly. "That's not just Victorian," she murmured, stepping closer. "That's from the Marchand collection. French colonial, early 19th century." Liam blinked. "Marchand." She nodded and turned toward a filing cabinet, rustling through a set of thin folders. "We had a researcher here, maybe 10 years ago, wrote about haunted artifacts believed to carry residual spiritual energy. The Marchand mirror came up in his papers. What happened to the researcher? He dropped out halfway through his thesis. Rumor was he went to a monastery in Quebec." She paused, but no one really knows. Liam felt a chill. "Can I see what he wrote?" Minutes later, a manila folder was laid out in front of him. Inside were photocopies of handwritten notes, newspaper clippings, and a few blurred photographs. He flipped through them, his breath catching on a page that read, "The mirror was once a mourning device, a tool for seances and necromancy, said to retain the souls of those who died within its reflection." Beneath the page, a torn newspaper article dated 1843. "Family of 4 found dead in front of mirror. Faces frozen in horror. Glass left intact. No signs of entry." Liam's hand trembled. 2, an unexpected call. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. He kept his phone by his bed, unsure if he was hoping or dreading it would ring. At 2:17 a.m. it did. The caller ID showed no number. He hesitated and then picked up. Silence, then static. And then, whispering. Je me souviens. Liam's heart stopped. Who is this? The whisper repeated louder. Je me souviens. I don't speak French. What does that mean? A female voice clear as day now spoke, I remember. Even if you don't. The call cut off. He dropped the phone. He remembered the line from the article again. The mirror retains the souls of those who died within its reflection. Was someone calling from inside it? 3. A letter hidden in wood. The next morning, Liam returned to the mirror. He had to know more. He peeled off the sheet carefully, the fractured glass now webbed with sharp cracks, distorting the reflection into fragmented shards of light and shadow. Then something strange happened. The corner of the frame where a small piece of wood had splintered from the fall revealed something tucked inside. A yellowed scrap of paper folded tightly sealed in a waxy film. He pried it out gently. The handwriting was in cursive, elegant, and old-fashioned. To whomsoever finds this, if you have seen them, those who no longer live, you must act quickly. The mirror is not cursed, it is bound. It remembers all who passed through it, and it does not forget. They are trapped. I was the last to attempt release. I failed. Do not shatter the glass. It only makes them angry. The key lies in what is buried beneath the frame, beneath the truth. God help you. Beneath the frame. Liam turned the mirror over, heart pounding. The back panel was heavy and screwed in tightly. He grabbed a screwdriver and began undoing each one. The panel gave way with a creak, revealing not just the hollow backing, but something taped to the inside. A photograph, sepia-toned. A woman in a morning gown, black veil covering her face. Behind her stood 5 blurred figures, unclear shadow-like. But the strange part, Liam recognized one of the faces. The man on the far right was one of the reflections he had seen in the mirror. Cat de Séance diary. Taped beside the photograph was a tiny leather-bound diary. He opened it carefully. It was written in both French and English, dated 1839 to 1842. The first few pages described the morning rituals of Madame Clarice Marchand, a known spiritualist in New Orleans who had moved to Quebec in her later years. One entry, dated August 13, 1841, read, "Tonight we succeeded. I saw him again. My brother stood behind me, clear as moonlight. The mirror responds to my grief. It stores his memory, the energy of my loss. It fuels the ritual." Another, dated 2 weeks later, I made contact with another soul. Not kin, a stranger. He begged for help, said he had been stuck inside the mirror since he died at sea. They come to me now every night. So many, too many. And the last entry, written in trembling hand, I cannot free them. The mirror has become a prison. My own reflection weeps. I have sealed this journal inside the frame so that no other may repeat my mistake. Burn it, or bury it in consecrated ground, and never ever look too long. Liam closed the book, hands cold. He finally understood. The mirror didn't show the dead randomly. It remembered every soul who had died in front of it or within its energy field. And now it had seen him. High-five, talking to the dead. Liam turned to the cracked mirror again. "You're watching me, aren't you?" he whispered. Silence. He took a breath. "Who are you?" The cracks shimmered faintly like veins of ice catching moonlight. He lit a candle and placed it in front of the mirror. "Show me," he said. And then it began. The light flickered. The room darkened unnaturally so. From the mirror, faces emerged slowly, half-transparent, flickering in and out of view like dying television signals. Some he had seen before. Others were new. Then one spoke. A woman's voice, low and sorrowful. "Help us." Liam shuddered. "How?" The woman pressed her palm against the inside of the glass. "Find our names." "What names?" I said, "But what's your word?" "Buried in the church, the Marchand Chapel." The candle extinguished. All the faces vanished. Liam sat frozen for a long time. Then he whispered, "I'll go." 6. The Forgotten Chapel. The next day, armed with the diary, The photo and a map from the archives, Liam headed to a long-abandoned cemetery on the outskirts of town. There, hidden under ivy and snow, stood the crumbled remains of the Chapelle de Marchand. The roof was mostly collapsed, the stained glass windows shattered long ago. But the foundation remained, and beneath it a stone crypt. He pried open the rusted iron gate and descended the narrow stone stairs. The air was stale and the silence was oppressive. Inside he found 5 stone coffins, each carved with a single word: Memory, reflet, chagrin, silence, écho. Not names, not even dates, just concepts. But something clicked in Liam's mind. These weren't just metaphors. They were what the mirror preserved. Memory, reflection, grief, silence, echo. He opened the diary again. In one of the earlier pages, Clarice had written, "Each soul, when captured, is named not by who they were, but by what they left behind." That's why the mirror didn't forget. It remembered what lingered. 7. The voice returns. That night, Liam returned to his dorm and placed the mirror on the floor. "Chagrin," he whispered. The mirror shimmered. A woman's face appeared, tear-streaked eyes, red lips moving. "I lost them all," she whispered. "Who were you?" "I don't remember, only the pain." Liam closed his eyes. "How do I release you?" "Say my name," she begged. "I don't know it." "You will," she whispered and faded. Over the next few hours, Liam repeated the same with the others. Each had a different memory. Each spoke of sorrow, fear, longing. But none remembered their own name. Until the last one. The man in the back of the sepia photo. He spoke clearly, Andre Leclerc. Liam gasped. "That's you!" "Yes. You're the only one who remembers. I died trying to free the others. I failed. I am the last witness." "Then help me." "There is one final step," Andre said. "You must bury the mirror in the chapel under the symbol of memory. Only then will the loop be broken. And if I don't, they'll never stop. And neither will the mirror." 8. The burial. Liam waited until dawn. He wrapped the mirror tightly in linen and rope, then drove back to the chapel ruins. The sun was just beginning to rise over the crumbling stones. He entered the crypt, walked to the coffin marked Memory, and began to dig beside it, earth and stone cold and heavy. As he lowered the mirror into the ground, he whispered the names he had learned, not the real ones, but the ones the mirror remembered. Chagrin, silence, reflet, écho, André. He poured in the soil, covering the glass completely. Then as the first rays of sun struck the stone walls, something shifted. A wind moved through the crypt. Not from outside, but from within, a gentle exhale. And then, peace. No more whispers, no more faces, just silence. The true kind. Sakai, year aftermath. Liam returned to campus and sat alone in the library, the diary beside him. He had a strange feeling like something had closed. Not just a chapter, but a circle. That night he dreamed of the mirror one last time. But this time it was empty. No faces, just his own. And he was smiling. Burn it or be taken. I stood in the center of my room, the air thick with the scent of smoke and old wood. The mirror leaned against the wall, tall and silent, its surface dark as if mourning something unseen. A week had passed since I last saw my reflection. No, not my reflection, my death. In the days following that horrifying vision, I tried everything. Salt rings, candles, prayers, even digital cleansing rituals I'd seen on obscure forums. But the mirror wouldn't let go. Each night it flickered to life. Shadows twisted behind the glass. Faces I'd never seen. Faces I'd seen die. Sometimes even my own, staring back with eyes hollowed by time and something older. But tonight I'd had enough. I stood before it, holding a heavy jug of gasoline, trembling hands and burning resolve. I'd made the decision. Either I destroyed it, or it would destroy me. It all began to escalate after I returned the frame piece to the mirror. An ornate corner I found hidden beneath a false panel in the attic engraved with initials I didn't recognize. AG, the moment I snapped it into place, the mirror sighed. That's the only way to describe it, like some trapped breath finally exhaled. That night I had a dream, if it even was a dream. I was standing in a room that wasn't mine. Candlelight flickered. The air was cold and a woman stood across from me, pale and dressed in black. Her face was blurry like smeared paint, but I could feel her stare through the veil of reality. She spoke one sentence. "You remember me because the mirror does." I woke up choking. On the morning of the 10th day, my phone buzzed with a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Claire, you still have that mirror?" I hadn't told her anything. Not a word since college, but somehow she knew. I called immediately. Her voice came through in a whisper. "I think it's the same one. Antique shop on Jackson Silver Vines on the edge." I froze. Yeah, she told me everything. A woman named Amelia Graham, the initials AG, was murdered in the 1920s. A spirit medium wrongly accused of causing the death of a client's child. Rumor had it she sealed her soul into the mirror during a ritual gone wrong, vowing that anyone who tried to forget her would remember her forever. The mirror remembers even if you don't. Claire found records of suicides, disappearances, even entire families who vanished, always connected to the mirror's last known location. And every time the mirror changed hands, its power grew stronger. "You have to burn it," she whispered, "before it claims you completely." "But it doesn't burn," I told her. "I tried." "Then you're not burning the right thing." It was nearly midnight when I pieced it together. The frame. The original carved frame with Amelia's initials. The wood was not ordinary. It was cemetery cedar, the same kind used to build spirit boxes and funeral urns a century ago. Claire sent me one last message. Break the seal, destroy the original wood, and speak her name. Out loud. As she dies, she has to be remembered to be forgotten. What an awful logic. But everything else had failed. So here I stood, canister in hand, the mirror staring at me. I unscrewed the cap. The smell hit me like a punch. Gasoline. Sharp, choking. I poured it slowly, carefully over the frame. The wood hissed and soaked it up like it had been thirsty for years. As I reached for the lighter, the mirror came to life. The reflection moved. My room remained still behind me, but in the mirror it flickered. Melted, reformed. A shadow stepped forward. It was me. But not me. My face was pale, cracked like porcelain. My eyes were sunken, skin waxy, dripping something black. "Don't," the reflection whispered, mouth unmoving. "She's part of you now." I stepped back. The voice didn't come from the glass, it came from inside my skull. "I don't want to die," it said. The flame trembled in my hand. "But you're not alive," I whispered. The moment the fire kissed the soaked wood, the scream tore through the house. The glass vibrated violently. The frame blackened instantly, bubbling, splitting open. The flame roared higher than it should have. My window shattered. Wind surged inward like a vacuum, sucking air into the mirror's core. And then, a face exploded from the surface. Her, Amelia, screaming. Her mouth opened wider than humanly possible. Eyes lit with blue flame. The reflection behind her burned in reverse flames, climbing the walls inward from the edges of my room, in the mirror but not in reality. She shrieked. "I will not be forgotten." I screamed back. "I remember you, Amelia Graham, now go." The mirror cracked. Once, twice. Then it shattered. Glass flew out like shrapnel, slicing the air. A piece nicked my cheek. Another lodged into the desk. But the rest was gone. Just gone. Ash swirled where the mirror once stood. The frame had turned to blackened bone. And in the silence that followed, I felt a release. Not just of her, but of everything. It's been 3 months since that night. The cut on my cheek healed, though a faint scar remains like a reminder. Claire and I still talk. We're planning to meet soon. She's been cataloging supernatural artifacts across the country now. The antique shop on Jackson closed permanently. The owner vanished the day after I burned the mirror. I still avoid reflections when I can, not out of fear, out of respect. Because I understand now. The dead aren't always trying to hurt us. Sometimes they just don't want to be forgotten. I saw myself die. I always thought the worst thing that could happen to someone was seeing the face of a ghost in the dark. I was wrong. The worst thing is seeing your own face, twisted in death, in a mirror that doesn't lie. It started the night after I smashed the mirror, or thought I did. I remembered the shattering sound glass flying like frozen raindrops in slow motion. The frame cracked in half and the reflective surface split into jagged splinters. My breathing had been ragged, my hands trembling, heart racing. But when I walked back into the room the next day, the mirror was whole again, as if nothing had ever happened. Same ornate edges, same silver shimmer, same cold silence that somehow seemed to listen. I didn't touch it. I barely dared to look, but I saw at the faintest flicker of me not moving like I was, not blinking when I blinked, a second behind, as if delayed, or watching, or worse, independent. Juan, are you still you? I sat in the library the next day, eyes bleary, skin pale. Even my classmates avoided sitting next to me. Who could blame them? I hadn't slept properly in days. I flinched every time I saw glass windows, water reflections, shiny metal surfaces. Then Lion, my only real friend left, walked in. She sat across from me and gently slid a warm banh mi across the table. You're disappearing, she said, her tone trying to stay light. I managed a weak smile. I'm not hungry. Her voice lowered. You're not okay, Min. What's going on? I almost told her everything. About the mirror, the faces, the whispers, the night the mirror fixed itself, the time I thought I saw my own face in a puddle, staring back at me dead-eyed, motionless, while I blinked in horror. But how do you explain something like that? I just haven't been sleeping, I said instead. Bad dreams. You need to come stay at my place for a while. No, I said too quickly. I can't leave it alone. Lion raised an eyebrow. Leave what? I didn't answer. She didn't push, but she left the sandwich anyway. 2. Death looks like me. That night I sat across from the mirror. I didn't turn it toward me. I kept it face down, but that didn't help, because when I walked past it on my way to the bathroom, I saw my reflection on the wall behind it, as if the mirror had turned around when I wasn't looking. It stared back at me, mouth slightly open, like it had something to say. But it wasn't moving in sync. It lagged behind, like it was recording, processing, and replaying me, dead. And in that horrifying second, I realized something else. My reflection's eyes were gray. Mine were brown. 3 to 33, the dream that wasn't. That night, I had a dream. I was standing in my room, but it was silent. Not the quiet kind. The kind where even sound is afraid to exist. I turned around slowly. The mirror was upright. Lit by moonlight, I saw myself in it, pale, disheveled eyes sunken. And then my reflection moved. But I didn't. It raised its hand, pressed its palm against the glass. Then slowly, it smiled. A grotesque grin that stretched too wide. I backed away, tried to scream, but my voice didn't work. Suddenly, cracks spread across the mirror's surface like spider webs of light. And from behind, the glass hands pressed outward. Dozens of them, clawing, scraping, trying to get out. One of them had my face, and it was screaming. I woke up drenched in sweat, but the scream still echoed, because it hadn't come from the dream. It came from the mirror. Furkanchuman, Sony Hanarmi Thor, burn it all. I decided that was it. This time I wouldn't just break it, I'd burn it. I took the mirror out into the small field behind the dorms. It was almost midnight. No one was around. I doused it in lighter fluid. Hands shaking, I lit a match. It flared bright, dropped onto the frame. Flames roared. Smoke spiraled. The mirror's surface twisted with the heat, warping, melting. But then, it screamed. Not a sound from fire or wood. A human scream, raw, high-pitched, terrified. It was me. I fell backward, heart slamming in my chest. And through the fire, I saw my reflection. Burning, melting, eyes wide with agony. It was me dying. I crawled away sobbing. The fire burned for hours. I watched until there was nothing left but ash and blackened glass. Or so I thought. The next morning I woke up in bed, which made no sense. I didn't remember coming back. My shoes were clean, no soot, no smell of smoke. And worst of all, the mirror was back on my wall, untouched. No cracks, no burn marks. It stared at me like it always had. But this time, there was something different. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. 6. A visit to the temple. Desperate, I went to a small temple outside the city. A quiet monk sat beside a lotus pond feeding koi fish. I told him everything. He listened silently, eyes never leaving the water. When I finished, he finally spoke. Some objects are not cursed, he said slowly. They are doors. Doors. He nodded. Not between places, between selves. You did not break the mirror. You broke through it. What's on the other side? The monk looked up, eyes distant. Versions of us. Ones who should not cross over. I whispered. Then why is mine trying to? He answered with a chilling calm. Because you're the one who died. I froze. My throat tightened. No, I'm alive. The monk placed a hand on my chest. No heartbeat, he said softly. I staggered back. No, that's not possible. He looked at me with infinite sadness. You saw your own death. Because it already happened. You're the echo. 7. I want my body back. Back in my dorm, the mirror pulsed faintly with a sickly light. And now I saw it. The reflection wasn't just me anymore. There were others behind it. Crowded, staring. Ghosts or echoes, or worse, other versions of me. All of them dead. And one of them was speaking now. Mouth moving in time with mine. Except, not quite. I want my body back, it whispered. I backed away. No, this is my life. You took it from me. I didn't. You destroyed the door. Now we're trapped. It stepped closer inside the glass. And as it did, my body began to feel colder. My skin paled. My breath slowed. It was taking me, replacing me, piece by piece. The final choice. I ran. I went to the highest floor of the dorm, the mirror in hand. The wind outside was violent. I stood on the rooftop, trembling. If what the monk said was true, then maybe this wasn't my life. Maybe I had died in that original accident or the fire. And this echo, this shadow of me, was just lingering where it shouldn't. But if I died again for real, would the cycle stop? I lifted the mirror high. Voices screamed in my head. All versions of me, begging, laughing, crying. One life for 100 reflections. I let go. The mirror shattered on the concrete far below. And for the first time, there was silence. 9. What remains? I woke up in a hospital. Lean was sitting beside me, eyes red from crying. She said they found me unconscious on the rooftop, clutching a shard of glass. But I had a pulse. Heartbeat. I was alive. Really alive. The doctors said I had a seizure from stress and sleep deprivation. But I knew better. I knew what I saw, what I was, and what I barely escaped becoming. Lane hugged me tightly. You're safe now, she whispered. But in the corner of the hospital room, on a reflective metal tray, I saw my face, smiling back. And it blinked 1 second too late.